The night Emma's world broke apart began like any other. She had spent the whole day making sure the house was spotless. A soft rain tapped against the kitchen window while she set the table for dinner. The smell of fresh bread and soup filled the air. She believed Daniel, her husband, would come home tired but happy, as he always used to. For years, she had built her little world around that man, trusting that their love would last forever. She had no idea everything was about to change. When Daniel walked in, something was different. His steps were firm, almost cold. He didn't greet her with his usual smile. Instead, he stood near the door with a look that made Emma's heart tighten. She asked softly, "Is everything okay?" But his eyes did not meet hers. There was a long silence, the kind that feels heavy and full of secrets. Then, with a voice that carried no warmth, he said, "Emma, I can't do this anymore." Her hands froze on the tablecloth. She didn't understand at first. She thought maybe he was tired or upset from work. But as he spoke again, his words cut through her like sharp wind. "I've met someone else," he said. "I love her. I want her to live here. You need to leave." Emma stood still, her breath caught in her chest. For a moment, the world around her went quiet. The rain outside seemed to stop. Her eyes searched his face, hoping to find some sign of regret, but there was none. His expression was firm, almost as if this decision had been sitting in his heart for a long time. She whispered, "Daniel, this is our home, our life." But he just looked away and said, "It's not anymore." Emma felt a deep pain spread through her chest. This was the man she had trusted, the man she had believed would protect her no matter what. She wanted to cry, scream, or beg, but her voice was gone. All she could do was stand there, clutching the edge of the table to keep herself from falling. Within an hour, Daniel handed her a small suitcase with some of her clothes. He didn't ask where she would go. He didn't offer a kind word. She looked at the walls, at the pictures of their wedding, at the little kitchen where they once laughed together. Now it felt like she was no longer part of the story written in this house. A stranger was about to take her place. She walked out into the cold night with nothing but that small suitcase. The rain had grown heavier, soaking her hair and clothes. She could feel the chill sinking deep into her bones. The road was quiet, except for the sound of her wet shoes against the pavement. She had nowhere to go, no family nearby, and no idea what to do next. Her heart felt empty, like someone had taken it out and left a hollow space inside her. Cars passed by on the distant road, but no one stopped. She held her suitcase close to her chest, not because it was heavy, but because it was all she had left. Every step away from the house felt like walking farther into darkness. She remembered their wedding day, their promises, the dreams they shared. How quickly those dreams had been taken away. Emma wandered for a long time, her clothes sticking to her skin from the rain. She felt lost, not just on the road, but inside her soul. It wasn't just about losing a home, it was about losing the person she thought would never leave her. She thought about turning back, but what would she go back to? A man who had already replaced her. A house that no longer belonged to her. The road narrowed as she reached the edge of town, where streetlights grew dim and trees stood tall like quiet shadows. Her feet ached, her hair stuck to her face, and her body shivered with cold. She whispered to herself, "You can do this," but even her own voice sounded weak. Just then she heard the sound of an engine. A pickup truck approached slowly from behind. For a moment, fear gripped her chest. She didn't know who it might be. The truck slowed down beside her and the window rolled down. A man's voice spoke gently. "Hey, are you okay?" She turned and saw him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with kind eyes that seemed to reflect the warm light from inside the truck. His flannel shirt and rough hands made it clear he worked outdoors, probably in the nearby forest. His name, as she would later learn, was Liam, but at that moment he was simply a stranger with concern in his eyes. Emma didn't answer at first. Her lips trembled and her hands were cold. Liam stepped out of the truck carefully, making sure not to frighten her. The rain was falling harder now, and he offered her a blanket from the back seat. "You'll get sick out here," he said softly. "Let me help you." She hesitated. Trust was not easy when your heart had just been shattered, but something about his calm voice and gentle movements made her believe he meant no harm. She nodded slowly. He wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, and the warmth almost made her cry again, not because of the cold, but because it reminded her what kindness felt like. Liam opened the truck door for her. "I live just a few miles from here," he explained. "It's warm and safe. I won't bother you." Just let me help." For the first time that night, Emma felt a small spark of safety. She climbed into the truck, still clutching her suitcase. The heater filled the cabin with warmth, and she pressed her hands against it, feeling the numbness fade. Liam didn't ask too many questions. He didn't push. He just drove quietly through the rain, letting her breathe. As they drove past the dark trees, Emma looked out the window. Her old life was behind her now. The pain was still there, sharp and deep, but somewhere in the silence of that truck, a tiny thought grew in her heart. Maybe this wasn't the end of her story. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. When they reached his small cabin near the forest, it was simple but warm. Light from the windows spilled out into the night, making it look like a safe place in a cold world. Liam gave her a towel and a cup of tea. He didn't ask why she was alone on the road. He just said, "You're safe here." Emma sat quietly, wrapped in the blanket, listening to the rain hit the roof. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know how she would rebuild her life. But in that warm cabin, for the first time in many hours, she didn't feel completely alone. Outside, the wind blew through the trees, but inside there was a soft calm. Liam moved around the small kitchen, his quiet presence steady like the sound of the fire. Emma's heart was still broken, but she felt a fragile sense of hope settling in. A stranger had seen her in the darkness and chosen to stop, not because he had to, but because he cared, and though she didn't know it yet, this meeting on a rainy night was going to change the path of her life forever. The sound of rain faded by morning. A soft golden light filled the small cabin, warming the wooden floor and walls. Emma opened her eyes slowly. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the memories of the night came rushing back. The suitcase, the rain, Daniel's cold words. Her heart squeezed, but the warm air in the cabin felt like a gentle hand holding her steady. Liam was already awake. She could hear the soft clinking of dishes from the kitchen. When she sat up, she saw him pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He looked calm, focused, like a man who had built his life with steady hands. When he saw her, he gave her a small smile. Not the kind that tries to fix everything, but the kind that says you're safe here. "Good morning," he said. His voice was quiet and kind. Emma nodded. "Good morning," she whispered back. He placed a warm mug of coffee on the table in front of her. The smell wrapped around her like comfort. She hadn't eaten properly in a long time. Everything felt soft in that cabin, the light, the sounds, even the silence. Liam didn't ask too many questions. He didn't ask about Daniel or the night before. Instead, he spoke about simple things, the weather, the forest, his work. It felt easy. For weeks, Emma had felt trapped in a house full of cold words and fake smiles. Here, every word felt real. Over the next few days, Emma slowly settled into a quiet rhythm. She helped Liam with small things around the cabin, watering the little plants outside, folding laundry, or stirring the soup he made on the old stove. It wasn't her home, but it felt safe enough to breathe again. Sometimes she would sit on the wooden porch, watching the tall trees sway in the wind. The air smelled like pine and earth. She liked that smell. It reminded her of childhood, of simpler times when life wasn't so heavy. She didn't speak much at first, but Liam never rushed her. He just let her be, giving her space to heal in silence. One afternoon, Liam came back from the forest with his shirt a little dirty from work. He chopped wood for a living, and though his hands were rough, his eyes were always gentle. Emma watched him stack the wood by the wall. He caught her gaze and smiled shyly. "You look better today," he said softly. She didn't even realize she had been smiling a little. "I guess I am," she answered. And it was true. Her heart was still sore, but there was a new feeling growing inside her, a quiet strength she didn't know she had. At night, they sometimes sat by the fireplace. Liam told her stories about the forest, the first tree he ever cut, the storms that had passed through the woods, the quiet beauty of winter mornings. She listened closely, her heart slowly opening again, not to love, but to the simple warmth of human kindness. But healing was not a straight path. One evening, she received a message from Daniel. His words were polite, even soft, but Emma could feel the coldness behind them. He said he hoped she was okay and mentioned that Sophie had moved in. A sharp pain shot through her chest. She had once imagined growing old with him. Now he had given her place to someone else. Tears filled her eyes, and she stepped outside to breathe. The night was quiet, and stars spread across the sky like silver dust. Liam followed her, but he didn't speak right away. He stood a few steps behind, giving her space. After a while, he said, "It hurts when someone you trusted turns their back on you. But pain isn't the end of your story, Emma." She looked at him, surprised. His words weren't fancy or perfect, but they hit the center of her heart. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel weak. She felt strong, not because someone was saving her, but because she was standing again, on her own feet. The days turned into weeks. Emma began to help Liam more and more. She learned to make bread in his old oven. She went with him to the forest once just to see how he worked. She loved the sound of birds and the way sunlight danced through the leaves. In those quiet woods, she began to remember who she was before the pain. She started laughing again, softly at first, then fully like a bird learning to fly after a long winter. Liam never tried to be her hero. He simply stood beside her, steady as the trees around them. That was what made her feel safe. One morning, she looked at herself in the mirror in the small cabin bathroom. Her face looked different, not broken, but alive. She whispered to herself, "You're okay." And for the first time, she believed it. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel called her. He said he wanted to talk. For a moment, old fear wrapped around her chest, but it didn't stay long. She agreed to meet him, not because she missed him, but because she needed to close that door properly. She met Daniel in a small cafe in town. He was dressed neatly, as always, but his eyes held a hint of surprise when he saw her. She wasn't the quiet, unsure woman he had pushed away. She was standing straight, her voice calm. He started talking about how things weren't the way he expected. He spoke about regrets, about missing what they had. Emma listened quietly. Then she spoke clearly and firmly. "Daniel, you made your choice. You gave my place to someone else, but I found something you didn't give me, peace." He tried to smile, but it was weak. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away gently. That moment was not about anger. It was about freedom. She walked out of that cafe with her head held high, feeling the soft wind brush against her cheeks. When she returned to the cabin, Liam was fixing the old fence. She walked up to him with a quiet smile. He didn't ask what happened, but he looked into her eyes and she knew he understood. The pain that had once trapped her was no longer in control. That evening, as they sat on the porch, the sun was setting behind the trees. The sky turned golden and pink like a painting. Liam handed her a cup of warm tea. She looked at the trees, at the quiet forest that had slowly healed her heart, and whispered, "Thank you." He smiled softly. "For what?" "For stopping that night. For letting me breathe again." He shook his head gently. "You did that on your own, Emma. I just opened a door. You walked through it." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from something bright, hope. She realized that she didn't need someone to save her. She had saved herself by choosing to live again. In the weeks that followed, she started making plans. She wanted to rebuild her life, not to prove anything to Daniel, but for herself. She found a small job in town, something simple to start with. She began sketching again, something she used to love but had forgotten in her marriage. She even adopted a small dog that followed her everywhere. Liam and Emma grew closer, not because of a rush of romance, but because they shared quiet, honest days. He never treated her like someone broken. He treated her like someone strong. Slowly, she realized she liked being around him, not because she needed him, but because she enjoyed his presence. One early morning, as mist covered the forest floor, Liam invited her to walk with him. The world felt fresh, new, alive. She looked at the trees reaching for the sky and felt something inside her do the same. She wasn't the woman standing in the rain anymore. She wasn't the woman who begged someone to stay. She was Emma Collins, a woman who had lost everything and then found something even more precious, herself. As they walked through the forest together, her heart was calm. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but she wasn't afraid of it anymore. She had walked through pain and found her strength. And standing beside her was a man who had seen her at her lowest and still treated her with quiet kindness. The sunset painted the sky in soft colors that evening. The sound of the river nearby whispered like a promise. Life was not perfect, but it was real. And for Emma, that was more than enough. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the fresh air. She was ready to begin again, not as a woman left behind, but as a woman who had learned how to rise.